name is Chef Lopez, and today we'll be making potato gnocchi. Potato gnocchi, only 4 ingredients. 4 ingredients necessary to make this delicious pasta from potato. For those ingredients, you'll need russet potatoes, eggs, salt, and all-purpose flour. Now, I'm going to be using 4 pounds of potatoes, 2 eggs, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 3 cups of flour. Let's get going. Okay, so let's get started. For the potato gnocchi, like I mentioned, you only need 4 ingredients: potato, flour, salt, and an egg. We'll start with the potato. Italian grandmothers will tell you that the best potato for potato gnocchi is a Yukon Gold potato. But today, we're using russet potatoes. The russet potato is a low moisture, high starch potato that is great for baking, pureeing, and in this case, potato gnocchi. Before we start working with the russet potato, however, we're going to set our oven to 400 degrees. Once we've set our oven to 400 degrees, what we're going to do next is wash our potatoes. These potatoes have been pre-washed, and so then they're ready to work. I'm going to take a fork and I'm going to poke the potato, turn it around, poke it again. Now, the reason why I'm poking the potato is because this will allow for the potato to cook faster. I've pre-poked the rest of the potatoes, so then we'll move on to the next step. Another trick that will help these potatoes cook a little bit faster is by wrapping them in foil. And by wrapping them in foil, we're also helping the potato cook a lot faster. The steam will stay trapped within the foil, thus causing the potato to speed up that process to cooking. Now, when it comes to putting the potato into the oven, you can either use a sheet tray, place the potato on the sheet tray along with your other potatoes, or you can simply put the potato on the rack of the oven. Either way, the potato is still cooking. Now, I have already cooked potatoes in advance to help speed the process of this recipe. The best way to make sure that the potatoes are cooked is by carefully opening up the potato and by either using a toothpick or a knife, poking the middle of that potato. Now, if you feel a resistance when you're poking the potato, then the potato is not done. But if you don't feel any resistance, then the potato is done. For this demonstration, I have already allowed the potatoes to cool for 10 to 15 minutes. The potatoes are still a little bit warm to the touch. But it's best to work with these potatoes when they are nice and warm, so that when making the gnocchi, it is a nice, smooth, and velvety dough. So, I've placed a piece of foil on my counter. I have my knife ready, and I'm simply going to take a potato and peel the skin. Now, the potato might still be a little bit hot, so you might need to work in segments. It's okay if you do not get all of the skin. If the potato is a little too hot to handle, that is perfectly fine. Just place the potato on the counter and peel away with the knife. rotating the potato so that you're able to get as much of the peel off as possible. Again, it's not necessary to get all the peel off. As long as you try to get most of it, then you'll be fine. And for the best gnocchi possible, again, it is wise to work with the potato while it's hot. Now, once you've removed all the skins from your potatoes, simply pick up that piece of foil where all the potato skins are at and throw it away. Once you have peeled your potatoes, we will proceed with the potato gnocchi. We will be grating them in a box grater. The smallest setting is the best setting for this procedure. Now, traditionally, they would like you to use a ricer or a food mill. But since I do not own a food mill or a ricer, I will be using a box grater. If you do not have a box grater, you can use a strainer, a masher, or even a fork. I will be grating the potatoes on the counter. I have 3-stepped the counter, and now I'm ready to proceed. I'm going to take a potato and simply grate it on the grater. Now, it is okay if the potato starts to crumble a little bit, but try to get the majority of the potato passed through the grater. Gather any additional crumbs of the potato that fall down and pass them through the grater. Now, I'm doing a 4-pound potato gnocchi, but a 2-pound potato gnocchi would probably be sufficient enough to feed roughly 3 to 4 people. Being that my family is a family of 7, that is why I am doing a 4-pound potato gnocchi. If you will do a 2-pound potato gnocchi, you need 2 pounds of russet potatoes, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 egg, and 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Now, one of the reasons why you might not want to use a masher is because the more you mash the potato, the gummier the potato will get. And in this case, when making potato gnocchi, you want to try to avoid getting gummy potatoes. It goes without saying, guys, be careful when you're working with the box grater, as the possibility of you cutting yourself is there. Now, as I'm getting to the last potato, what you want to make sure is that you go through the pieces of potato that you can possibly go through. Now, this might look like unusable potato, but what I would recommend you guys doing is to save this potato and actually use it for some hash brown potatoes or simply some sauteed potatoes with eggs in the morning. A great addition to your breakfast so that nothing is wasted. And the final product that you will see once we have grated all the potatoes is our grated russet potatoes. And now we're ready to make the dough. I'm going to simply crack my eggs into my bowl, making sure that I crack on a surface so that I get no shell whatsoever into the bowl. Wash my hands very quickly. You want to make sure that your hands are dry because we do not want to introduce any moisture whatsoever into the dough. Break up the yolk and whisk. What you want to do is move back and forth and in a circular motion. You want to make sure just that the yolk and the whites are incorporated and that the mixture is nice and smooth. Great. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to form a well. Form a well, and then what we're going to do next is we're going to drop in that egg mixture. Using the fork, we want to add the potato into the well, right? And at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to incorporate the flour using our sifter. We're going to do half a cup at a time. And at this point, you get your hands dirty a little bit. Use that fork to help you out. And again, keep adding flour. Another half cup. If you would like, one tool that will help you with this process and not get as messy is the bench scraper. Simply grab from the bottom and fold over. Again, I'm going to introduce half a cup of flour. At this point, I have already introduced 1.5 cups of flour. Now, this dough will still need more flour. I'm going to add another half cup of flour and my 1 teaspoon of salt. One more half cup of flour, 1 more teaspoon of salt. Before adding any more flour, we want to make sure that we can form the dough. If we don't need to add more flour, then we'll finish at this point. But if we see that we need to add more flour, then we will add more flour. I still have half a cup of flour in here. So I've only used 2.5 cups of flour. We will still use this flour when it comes to rolling out our gnocchi. So now we're just going to shape our dough. And at this point, our dough is ready to be worked with. So I'm just going to make it into a log. Set it here on the side. And cut it into eighths. 1, 2, 3. Once I've cut it into eighths, I'm gonna add some flour to prevent it from drying. And clean my space to get ready for the next part. And now we're ready to roll out our gnocchi. Now, before we actually start to roll out our gnocchi, fill a pot of water and bring it up to a boil. This might take a while, so while this pot is working, we're gonna work on our gnocchi. To make sure that this gnocchi doesn't dry out, place a piece of plastic on it and just make sure that you cover it. To work with our first piece, we're gonna take out our piece, right? And using some of that flour that was left over, we're gonna flour the surface and start to roll out the piece into a snake-like size piece. Add a little bit of flour to your piece. And you just want to make sure that all is even. Now, it does not have to be perfect, but as long as it's roughly half an inch, then you're good to go. So, now that we've rolled out our gnocchi dough, what we're going to do next is you're either going to use a bench scraper or a knife to cut, and you're simply going to cut 1/2 inch pieces, 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Now that we've cut our gnocchi, simply going to dust them and then place them on the side and continue with the next batch of dough. So once we've cut our gnocchi into small pieces, what we're going to do next requires a fork, or down the line, if you would like to purchase this, it is a handy tool to actually make gnocchi, which is a gnocchi board. But first, I'll show you how to do it with a fork. Grab your gnocchi, place it on top of the fork, and with your thumb, you're going to push on it and roll it down. Now, the harder you roll, the better the shape will come out. Again, place it on top, press down on the gnocchi, and roll down, right? If you see that the gnocchi is sticking to the fork, add some flour to the fork, right? Add some flour to the fork. Now, you can use the board as well. With the board, flour the board, right? And then essentially the same thing, press down to get the shape. Press down to get the shape. Flour on the fork, press down to get the shape. Now, if you don't want the shape, then that's perfectly fine. You're ready to actually cook your gnocchi. But I'm just going to take a quick second to shape my gnocchi. So once you've rolled your gnocchi in either the fork or the gnocchi paddle, you can either cook them all off, or in this case, what I'm doing is I'm placing some on a sheet tray and I'm going to freeze them for later use. That way you have some gnocchi for another moment, another time. Once your water has reached the boil, what you want to do is add some salt. And what we're looking here is to actually make sure that the water is salted enough so that it can taste almost as if you are tasting the sea. So at this point, I will be tasting the water. And it's pretty salty. So the water is ready to actually be used. I'm going to place my gnocchi in the water. And what we're looking for is the gnocchi to float on top of the water. Once the gnocchi floats on top of the water, wait an additional 15 seconds before you take them out. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to reheat some of the tomato sauce that I've made. Now this is some of the tomato sauce that we did in the previous video, so I didn't actually season it. So at this point, what I'm going to do is add a pinch of salt and some black pepper. Mix it around. As you can see, the gnocchi is starting to float to the top. Give it an additional 15 to 20 seconds before we actually remove the gnocchi. As they float to the top, I'm simply going to taste my tomato sauce to make sure that it's seasoned. Now, I did mention a pinch of salt and some black pepper. But what you really have to do, and this is very important, is that you taste your food. Taste your food. At this point, this tomato sauce does not need any more salt. So I'm going to take my gnocchi out of the water by using a perforated spoon or spider. Bring my tomato sauce closer to me. And work that gnocchi. If you want a more runnier tomato sauce, just simply add some of this gnocchi water onto your tomato sauce. Heat it up for an additional 10 to 15 seconds. And again, what you want to make sure is that you taste. If you think that it needs more salt, add more salt. At this point, mine is ready to go. And all we do now is plate our gnocchi.